Hello, everyone, and welcome to the East Asia Summit, the second of our virtual summits and one of 15 of the summits that Holland IQ are running in 2022 around the world. My name is Lucy Blakemore. I am the VP for Global Insights at Holland IQ, and I'm joined here today by Saila Juuti from Education Alliance Finland. Hello, Saila.
Hello, Lucy. Good to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I think yours is one of the sessions I'm most excited about. It's very dear to my heart, the integration of pedagogy and product design in EdTech. I'm also fascinated actually by what you might or might not bring in from your background in game design and any of the way that your disciplines are coming together perhaps in what you're doing. But I don't want to talk too much before handing over to you. So Saila is going to take us through some of the work that Education Alliance Finland does, and particularly in this really important area of evaluation and looking at the impact of EdTech through a pedagogical lens. So Saila, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. So in my talk, I'm going to first present a bit about what Education Alliance Finland does and how we do assessment and evaluation and certification of EdTech. So as Lucy mentioned, my own background is actually on game design. I'm one of the founders of EAF, but my own background is not on pedagogy or teaching. Instead, I'm looking at the design from technical background and from design background. But let's go through what we do in Education Alliance Finland. It's a standard for educational solutions, and we offer this science-based quality standard and certification service for different kinds of educational products. The evaluations that we do, the idea is to provide any evidence of the possible impact and quality of the solution. And we are not measuring impact as outcomes. So we are not testing solutions at schools, for example. We are not testing them with real users. Instead, we are providing these type of expert evaluations, third-party independent assessments of what makes the solution pedagogically high quality. And how we do it is that we have our internal methodology that we've developed together with the researchers from the University of Helsinki. And we also offer a certification that acts as a proof of the educational value. How we started this service was actually just a consultation. As I mentioned, I'm from design background, and the rest of the people in EAF, they actually come from teaching background. And when we started EAF, we offered consultation, trainings on pedagogy, on good design. But very often we realized that actually the questions that come up during these talks, they are pretty much the same. That how to design high quality learning solutions. So we put together all this knowledge that we had, and we wanted to develop a standardized method of assessing the design. And once we had achieved this project, once we had the methodology together and we started to offer this service for companies in a standardized way, very often the companies ask that, okay, so do you actually have any kind of limit, or do you give any kind of proof that we are of high quality? And so we came up with certification, because that is a concrete proof that a solution has been evaluated by a third party, and then the company can display it with the product that we have reached the standard set by these people. But to take it to more concrete level, who we work with, we mainly work with educational technology companies, so different types of apps, learning tool, learning management systems as well, digital books, and sometimes also physical products such as robotics companies or different types of learning tools, especially for kindergarten. The pedagogical tools may not involve usage of digital technology that much. The main point with with who we can assess and what we can assess is that there is a learner. So there is someone who is having a learning experience. So we don't assess, for example, messaging tools, or we don't assess management tools, because those, even though those kind of solutions may be very valuable in education and they may save a lot of time for the teacher, for example, they don't have a learner who is experiencing any kind of pedagogical interaction with the tool. But the methodology that we use is also suitable for study programs. So we can assess what type of pedagogical activities are happening in a study program. So, for example, after school club or upskilling course that happens maybe online or led by a tutor, we can assess that if the pedagogy that this kind of program is promoting is good. And that happens by assessing the syllabus, the learning activities, the tasks that the students do, and also types of feedback they get, types of assessment that they get. So all kinds of pedagogical elements that happen in a program. We sometimes work with education providers, and for example, in Finland, we've done projects with the city of Helsinki and also with the National Agency for Education. And there we have, in these projects, we've taken the method that we use for in EdTech evaluations and train people who work in these cities to be able to assess their use of EdTech in a meaningful way. But that's we don't, for example, assess schools. We don't go to school and assess that if the pedagogy there is valid, because we are not looking at the design of the school. It's much more broader field of operation. We are mainly focused on these kind of learning solutions that have a limited scope, and where we can actually look at the design of the pedagogical activities, and not really focus on how they are actually executed in a live setting. And maybe the one reason why we do that is that it's a different game when you have a solution and when you're actually using it. And that's one of the challenges when thinking about impact, that our promise is that if a product is pedagogically well made, in ideal situation, it should produce the outcomes. But in realities, in schools, the ideal situation might be a bit far, because a teacher might not be trained properly to use a solution. There might be infrastructural issues that affect the use of the solution, or the group might have some challenges or specialities why a certain solution might not work in ideal way for them. And that's basically why we are looking at the solutions pedagogical approach instead of measuring the use at schools, because we see that every learning solution does represent some kind of pedagogical approach, and the aspects that we are looking at when analyzing this pedagogy is that, for example, how it delivers content, that what ways of delivering information there is the learner, for example, watching videos, are they actively using a simulation, are they answering questions, these type of things. And also the learning activities, so are they doing something with the tools that are provided, or are they simply receiving the information? But not only that not only what the learner is doing on the solution, but also what type of pedagogy the educator is guided to practice with the solution. So very often the learning solutions that we assess, they have a certain type of technology, but then they also come up with lesson plans or teacher guides that help the teacher to take this solution into use. So it can be a mix. It can be that there is a learning solution, let's say a robotic set, and then that there are separate activities that use this robot set along with other tools that the teacher might have in the classroom. And also when we're talking about LMSs, for example, the LMS solution usually doesn't come with any content. It might not even come with learning activities, but it might have features such as capability to do self-evaluation of your own learning, or ways to do a learning journal. And these are pedagogical elements that we can assess from this LMS, and we can assess that how does the teacher use these as part of their regular classroom activities. The examples I'm taking, they are pretty much from the K to 12, but actually the methodology has been used successfully with other solutions, also targeted to adults, because how we see is that the learning science doesn't really change that much. That although there are some differences between how children learn and how the adults learn, the principles of what kind of pedagogy works are pretty much the same, or they can be the same principles can be applied. How we do it, what's the core in our assessment is that all of the assessments start from the learning goals, because although the principles are same, so we can say, for example, that if a person is doing an activity that requires concentration and application of information, that's an effective way of learning that information. So if they are, for example, programming themselves instead of just reading that how a program should work, that's more effective way of learning than just reading. But each kind of topic or learning goal requires a bit different type of pedagogy. So when we get a solution, we first start by assessing what goals it tries to meet, and we can do this by having a curriculum. Very often it's a national curriculum, especially if we are talking about primary school education, and we can map that if the solution is meeting certain curriculum goals. If we're talking about adult education or, for example, learning management, we sometimes ask the company to themselves define that what do they want to aim, what kind of learning goals they have for this program, for example. There are other frameworks that we can use that are publicly available. There are, for example, career goals or 21st century skills lists that come up from research and from various organizations. But once the learning goals are defined, then we analyze the pedagogical design. And our promise is that if the pedagogy is valid, it needs to align with these learning science principles, and we have a methodology developed for that is in our internal software that all our evaluators use when they are assessing the solutions. And that's the third kind of component to that. It's the expert assessment. So it's not kind of enough that there is one person who would be filling out the evaluation, but we always use a team. So we always have 3 teachers who are testing the product. So they are experts on their field. They understand the principles, they understand our methodology, and when they test the product, they are able to analyze it completely. And the reason why we are using several experts is that when we are talking about, let's say, usability research, very often the minimum amount of people who should test a solution for usability faults is 3 to 5. And that covers at least 90% of critical issues in the program. And we've, based on our experience, we've noticed the same. So if we have 3 people independently going through the program, we can already say that the development areas and strengths that they come up are pretty much the same. There isn't that much deviation of how they view the product, even though there might be some personal preferences that someone might prefer a bit more collaborative pedagogy, whereas the other teachers might say that, all right, this one doesn't really promote collaboration, but it works fine for individuals. And this type of small variation is totally acceptable if we still see that the whole team is seeing the product in the same way, so that they are assessing the current situation the same manner. I believe that once we get talking with Lucy, we can go deeper into what kind of principles we have when we are assessing the pedagogy. But if I quit my monologue to telling a bit about who we work with and what type of projects we've had. So we are, even though our operations are mainly based on Finland, and the team of teachers who we work with is mainly Finnish, we have other nationalities as well, and we have trained teachers from various countries. But still, our clients come from all over the world. So in Southeast Asia, for example, we worked with EduSpace Accelerator, who has a cohort twice a year. So and many of these cohort companies go through our evaluation, and even if they don't, we still host some trainings and workshops for them. The other kind of clients are private companies who approach us because they want to have the feedback that they get from the evaluation and also receive the certification. And sometimes we do projects for example, this Finnish National Agency for Education, who we wrote a guideline for using and assessing EdTech, for example. But yeah, these are some of the companies, and there's plenty of others. That's perhaps the all I can everything I can present like this. So maybe we can go forward with the conversation, Lucy. Would that be?
Absolutely, yes. I didn't want to take your slides away too early, but that is a wonderful time to and I have so many questions. I'm beginning to think we should have organized a 3-hour session to talk about this. So I'm going to try and keep my questions at a higher level than I would like to, because I think everything that you are walking through there is so very important for this industry at the moment, and becoming more and more important. And perhaps maybe let's start there. I mean, you've been doing this for a number of years and across a number of countries. Do you have a sense that people are asking more and more for this kind of assessment and to be able to see products and potential for impact in this way?
Well, one very clear change that we've encountered is that when we started this in 2017, no one was talking about pedagogy. So the word was even a bit unfamiliar for many many people, no matter if they came from the development background or if they were investors or anyone else who might be in this space. But right now, I feel that pedagogy is very much on the focus. So everyone is telling that their solution is based on good pedagogy. And that's a very nice turn because it means that companies are really looking into research, that they are really looking on what they are promising and where they are basing their design decisions.
I wonder if, do you get a sense for where the push is coming from for this this pedagogical understanding? Is it coming from EdTech companies themselves? Is it coming from governments or school or university institutions? Who's asking for this to be done better and defined better?
I think a lot of it is coming from the buyers, because when someone is telling that our solution is pedagogically valid and we are looking into pedagogy, it definitely raises the interest of people who are experts on that, so schools. And then it can be that it's becoming a bit of a buzzword. So when someone is telling that and it seems to work and it seems that to raise interest, everyone else is seeing that this is an important point. But of course, we are also talking about impact a lot. And when thinking about impact, you have to define if we are speaking about what we are speaking about. So are we speaking pedagogical impact, or are we speaking about, let's say, money saved, efficacy? What's that?
Yeah, exactly. And even when you're looking specifically at pedagogy, there are so many frameworks and contexts, and as you say, you draw on lots of different approaches. It sounds like there's a journey that you have to go on with people where you're also building capability and understanding at the same time with people who may have different understandings of pedagogy or very little at all. Can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, so our clients, sometimes they are very early stages in their development. So it's possible that or very often when we're talking with EdTech startup, it's either people who come from teaching background and someone from technical background. And if they come from technical background, they might not have the same kind of terminology that than the people from pedagogical background. So the gap that we usually have to kind of cross is that we have to kind of point out that why a certain feature is pedagogically sound and why it isn't. And very often this happens by giving concrete examples that this is the way how you give feedback. Your feedback comes directly after the learner has done something. And the way how you are now structuring your feedback is pedagogically valid because this and this and that. But you could improve it by taking it to next level, by giving it in this and this manner, and also providing a feed forward, for example. So when we are talking about actual features, very often the companies get this aha moment that, okay, so this is what it actually means.
Yeah. It's interesting. It sounds like it's so much more than an assessment. I mean, I'm sure on the outside there are people who go into it saying, I want my certificate, but the way you describe it, the assessment is the short endpoint, and it's actually what you go through as you're teaching and training and talking about the aspects and giving suggestions, as you say, that people can act on. Is that the intended way it works?
Yes, and like I said, we started as a consultation company. And we started this whole evaluation process because we wanted the consultation to be somehow formalized and somehow always based on principles. Yeah. And the certification kind of came as a side thing that was requested. But especially when talking with more mature companies, they have thought about their design very, very closely, and they have a good pedagogical understanding. So for them, it's more about looking for some fresh eyes and gaining some feedback from someone who might have a different perspective, and who might be actually giving a bit different kind of view on the topic.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm aware we must make sure we talk about the Southeast Asia region in particular. I think we could talk about the way you do things lots more, but I wonder if you can share some of your observations and understanding from the work that you've done with countries in the Southeast Asia region. What are you seeing? What can we understand about what's happening there?
At least one big segment that's there is the upskilling market. So there are several companies who are aiming at adult learners, teaching, for example, data science or digital marketing, because these are topics that are quite new. So there isn't that much formal education, or the programs are not accessible for everyone. And actually, we've evaluated some of these courses, and there are several high quality courses that are either these type of mixed boot camps, where the learner is taking part on online sessions and same time working on a project. That's one area where I'm sure that there are a lot of small actors in this space, because naturally it's quite it's tutor-led. It's not completely automatized process, and I don't think it can be. But it might be interesting to see that if some bigger players come come from this area.
Yeah.
And another maybe thing that is quite specific for Southeast Asia is that the LMS or the learning management systems that are used there, I think it's very interesting to see that who is kind of taking over that market, because the assessment systems, for example, they are quite different or they are quite detailed in these countries. So whoever is creating a learning management system there has to meet very, very specific requirements by each country and even by each school. Whereas I would say that in Europe, there isn't that much need for this type of so granular assessment or granular monitoring, or at least the programs seem to be quite much more simple.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, obviously there are lots of cliches about different learning approaches in different parts of the world, and many of the cliches about countries in Asia are around different styles of learning, perhaps less interactive or less, I won't go through those cliches here, but are you seeing different ways of thinking about pedagogy there from the companies that you're working with?
Not really, actually. I think many of the ways of learning are very similar. The main difference may be on this kind of monitoring and assessment. And I'm not saying that it's any weaker way of doing it. It's actually quite nice how much data is provided for the teacher and also for parents, because it's good that it's possible to monitor that, for example, where your child is, how your child is doing. The key thing that we are looking at is that how the parent or teacher is actually using this information. That if they know that the child is progressing on certain tasks, how do they communicate that back to the child? How do they encourage them, and how do they make sure that they are actually kind of progressing in optimal manner?
Yeah.
So not just monitoring for monitoring's sake, but also using it for good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you're talking, it's, whilst we're focusing on quite a specific aspect of EdTech, it very quickly blends into an understanding of the broader ecosystems around learning in each of the places that you're working in, which must include the skills and the capabilities of teachers and of EdTechs in the region. I mean, are you seeing anything particular in Southeast Asia, or even, back out as looking at the other countries that you work with, in terms of a growth in skills and capabilities in applying pedagogy in this space?
I think the companies that we work with, they are quite innovative. Because they are coming from these accelerator programs a lot. So they do have the ones that are selected for the cohorts that we work with, they usually already have a good understanding of pedagogy. So we are not really working with general tech companies. I would say that if there is a general tech company who wants to come to educational space, they might lack this understanding. That if they just want to get, for example, their messaging app or their let's say financial management app and apply it to school contexts, they might be struggling. But I would say that many of these companies that we work with, they have started as people who have been identifying a problem in education. So they are already starting with this information, and very often they have very good knowledge of the local conditions and local capabilities. So they know that what's the skill level of teachers who they wish to be using their solution.
Yeah.
So we are not trying to kind of say that we know that better. We actually know that these guys know their clients much better than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just as we bring this to a close, then let's look to the future. Where do you see things developing in the Southeast Asia region in this particular area? And then for Education Alliance Finland, where would you like to be going in 2, 5, 10 years' time?
Well, this is obviously a difficult question. maybe if I start with what we at EAF would like to do is that we would like to actually set up some local entities more, because right now, as we are working with Finnish teachers in Finland, and we can only help the companies up to a certain point. But if we would have, let's say, a local operator in, so to say, Singapore or any other country on that region, who would be able to train the local teachers so that they could mix their local knowledge and local expertise with the kind of expertise that we bring and the method that we bring to the table, we would be able to serve these companies in much more local manner. And for example, give them feedback that what would be required for you to go to Singaporean market. And I think that's maybe something that is going to be very interesting, that how any company can actually be both local and meet the local needs of education and also scale up to become kind of global player. So we shouldn't leave it only for these kind of tech giants who are giving us the infrastructure, but also have operators who are working in smaller scale and actually listening to the people there.
Yeah, and that's a lovely place to finish things. I think a reminder of, whilst we can have these wonderful frameworks and really valid assessments and approaches, actually they have to be used in conjunction with the local context.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to meaningfully scale. It sounds like you're saying. Any final words that you'd like to share, Saila? I'd love to talk for so much longer, but anything else you can share?
Don't give me open questions.
Fair enough.
No. I'm really happy that HolonIQ is organizing this tour again, and it's wonderful to speak to Southeast Asia audience. I'm looking forward to continuing the work with you guys.
Yeah, wonderful. And for those of you who are following the Summit series around the world, if you're at the in-person events in London or Stockholm, there will be Saila and other representatives from EAF at those events as well. And of course, if you'd like to understand more about what EAF is doing, please look up. They've got some great examples of what's happening. And it's a wonderful way to get to know, if you're not familiar with, how to start bringing together the pedagogical side with impact. I highly recommend it. So thank you again, Saila, for your time. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Lucy.